Well, we tried a free market system without labor unions. We tried it back in the 1920s and into the 30s, and it led the world into the biggest economic disaster it's ever seen in modern times. Now, I don't think we're talking free market or labor unions. We're talking free market with or without labor unions. And a free market system without labor unions is a total disaster.
Let's get other reactions to this now around the group. It's the free market system, Milton Friedman's been arguing, I think, not labor unions, which best protect the interests and serve the interests of the worker. Walter Williams, your reaction?
Well, I think clearly labor unions serve the best interests of workers who happen to be members of labor unions at the expense of workers who are excluded from being members of labor unions.
Ernest Green?
I don't think you can have a democratic society without having trade unions. I think if you look at any democratic country, it's essential to it. Right of workers to organize, and I think it's consistent. If we're to maintain a democratic country, those freedoms, that the right of workers to organize is a primary objective that we have to maintain.
Bill Brady?
Well, if they are so vital, why are so many union members leaving the unions? Why are they losing so many decertification? Why are the unions losing so many decertification elections? Why has the number of union members declined so precipitously from 23% of the labor force to, what is it now, less than 18%?
Well, it depends whose figures you're reading, but workers aren't leaving the labor movement in droves, and the union is not declining precipitously. My union, the United Steelworkers of America, the major unions in the country, many small ones are out organizing and growing. The mix of work in the society is changing. We have some employers, as we saw in the film, who can't wait to rush off to the South and try to get in an anti-union environment and invest their money in prosperity in the South instead of in the North. And surely if you invest money anywhere, you're going to have prosperity. So we also have a mix in terms of civil service and service workers, where we have employers who have grumbled on that film.
I don't know that if you invest money anywhere that you're going to have prosperity. I don't think that that's a given. That is, you seem to me to be dealing in a premise there that is incorrect.
But well, we haven't got a lot of time. Wait a minute. The key question we're discussing is who protects the worker? Is it the labor union or the free market that best serves his interest?
Well, it seems like from the evidence that I have from a number of research projects that I've engaged in, I found that labor unions protect their members often at the expense of disadvantaged people. And it's a very, very interesting question that labor unions down through the ages have discriminated against all kinds of people in favor of a particular class of workers. We find that labor unions have gone out on strikes and have murdered and maimed people because other people sought entry. And in terms of Mr. Green's remark, he says that in a free democratic society we need labor unions. Yes, that is true. We need the right for voluntary association. That is, people have the right to form associations, but it should not be a requirement that you be a member of a labor union in order to establish a contract for employment.
Can't we get some perspective in this, Walter? Talking about unions down through the ages makes no sense at all in terms of where we're at now in this century at this time. This business of trying to relate where unions come from to the medical profession and Hippocratic oaths, or hypocritical oaths, however one looks at that, back in the Greek islands really has very little relevance.
Yes, it does.
The violence, hear me out a minute, I waited patiently.
Okay.
The violence that's associated with, well, not so patiently, but I waited. The violence associated with the labor movement and so on has been minimal and was a reaction in this century, not over the ages, a reaction in this century to the violence done workers by corporations and powerful economic groups when there was no workers' organization to protect them and no way to deal with their greed and with their power.
Now I'm turning to Milton because he's heard the flavor of the discussion.
Sure. What Lynn Williams is now saying is utter nonsense. And there's no two ways about it. The conditions of the worker in this country before there were labor unions were very important, improved very greatly. You cannot tell me that millions of people, my parents, your parents for all I know, parents of many people around, came to this country from Europe in order to be exploited and in order to be subjected to violence. Of course, there were incidents
I agree with that
of violence.
vehemently. I mean, most of the blacks came to this country not voluntarily, but they were shipped here. And the interesting thing about the issue on Spartansburg,
hold on
though,
for a second.
is that you left out...
Let him finish, and then back to you, for sure.
The blacks are an exception, and I agree with you completely.
22 million exceptions, though.
They are a very important exception. But there are also millions and millions. The people that Mr. Williams represents are not mostly black. They are mostly from the Slavic countries that came from
but
Eastern
if you look
Europe.
at the membership of the steelworkers...
If we go back, there was violence, of course. There always has been violence. It's not excusable. I'm not excusing violence on the part of anybody. But I agree with Mr. Green and with Walter Williams that people should be free to organize. Of course they should be free to organize. What I object to is the special privileges that have been given by government to labor unions, which are not available to other groups at all. When labor unions have used violence in industrial disputes, they are not subjected to the same sanctions as people ordinarily are. When cars are turned over in the course of a labor dispute, how often do people go to jail as a result of it?
Dr. Friedman and Walter Williams go back in history, and they take a look at a situation where America was empty, where we didn't have anything like the sophisticated industrial economy we have today, but had a much more agricultural and rural kind of economy. And of course, when the impoverished peasants of Europe, my ancestors and most of our ancestors, except for the slaves, which is another situation, but when these people came from Europe and came to a wide open continent with the most fertile soil then available to anyone in the world, naturally there was progress. And I or any of us would be mad to deny progress. But as that developed, and as population increased and as we moved into a much more sophisticated industrial economy, we moved then into the situation in the 1930s. Or earlier than that, at the end of the century, as some of the more skilled jobs came along. The labor movement didn't happen by accident, didn't happen because there wasn't a need there. The results of this development, even with all the wealth available in America, the results of this development was that many working people were not having anything like, by standards of civilization or whatever, anything like their fair share in this progress.
Now, you're arguing that in a free market for labor, everyone benefits. Does that mean that you would favor abolition of all immigration restrictions?
The situation of immigration restrictions really has to do with the question of a welfare state, as I say in the film. I would favor completely free immigration in a society which does not have a welfare system. With a welfare system of the kind we have, you have the problem that people immigrate in order to get welfare, not in order to get employment. You know, it's a very interesting thing. If you had asked anybody, before 1914 the U.S. had no immigration restrictions whatsoever. I'm exaggerating a little bit. There were some immigration restrictions on Orientals, but it was essentially mainly free. If you ask anybody, any American economic historian, was that a good thing for America? Everybody will say, yes, it was a wonderful thing for America that we had free immigration. If you ask anybody today, should we have free immigration today? Almost everybody will say no. What's the difference? I think there's only one difference, and that is that when we had free immigration, it was immigration for jobs in which everybody benefited. The people who were already here benefited because they got complementary workers, workers who could work with them, make their productivity better, enable them to develop and use the resources of the country better. But today, if you have a system under which you have essentially a governmental guarantee of relief in case of distress, you have a very, very real problem.
This is true of every Western industrialized country.
And that's why today, under current circumstances, you cannot, unfortunately, have free immigration. Not because there's anything wrong with free immigration, but because we have other policies which make it impossible to adopt free immigration.
I'd like to other reactions. Is it at all feasible to open the door of the labor market internationally now? Bill Brady?
I would say yes, providing they open the door to us. I think that the door to not only the labor market, the door to all markets should be open, that is, product markets.
My feelings about the undocumented workers or Mexican Americans are inscribed at the foot of the Statue of Liberty. I think that people should have the right to come to this country. Now, those who would say, you know, I hear a number of people saying that, well, the immigrants are contributing to our unemployment problem. And I pointed this out to some people. I said, look, you know, this is the same rhetoric that the Irish use when the blacks are coming up from the north. You know, they're using blacks as scapegoats. They're saying, get those people back where they came from so that because our members can get jobs, you know. Unions were as well doing this. You know, they call them scabs, strike breakers, et cetera, et cetera. So I do not wish for Mexican Americans to become the new scapegoats of our particular national problems. They are not the problem, and our nation benefits to the extent that these people come here and work. And to that extent, so it's kind of good for them to remain illegal aliens as opposed to being legal aliens where they're subject to our welfare program, so that we don't want them to come here to work.
I think that this country cannot have a group of workers to remain outside the framework of our laws and our protections. And as long as we have workers who are attracted to the United States because of the standard of living, and I think minimum wages play a part in that, as part of that attraction. But it seems to me to have undocumented workers without providing either a means of protection for them, and it seems to me we've got to go to a question of providing the amnesty for those generations of workers who have come here over a period of time, now 2, 3, maybe 4 generations. We have to see that they have the same rights and protection of all other workers. And as it stands now, large numbers of them live outside the framework of the laws and statutes that we have on our books.
They do. And the tragedy of the situation is what Walter Williams points out, that as long as they are undocumented and illegal, they are a clear net gain. The nation benefits and they benefit. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. The tragedy is that we've adopted all these other policies so that if we convert them into legal residents, it's no longer clear that we benefit. They may benefit, but it's no longer clear that we do. What Len Williams said before is again a travesty on what was actually going on. The real boost to the trade union movement came after the Great Depression of the 1930s. That Great Depression was not a failure of capitalism. It was not a failure of the private market system, as we've pointed out in another one of the programs in this series. It was a failure of government. It was not the case that somehow or other there was a decline in the conditions of the working class that produced a great surge of unionism. On the contrary, unions have never accounted for more than 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 of American workers. The American worker benefited not out of unions. He benefited in spite of unions. He benefited because there was greater opportunity, because there were people who were willing to invest their money, because there was an opportunity for people to work, to save, to invest. That's still the case today. You say, we have to provide him with something or other, Ernest. Who are the we?
We the people.
How do we the people? But how do we the people do it?
And it seems we the people provide them the protection by seeing that their safety...
You're talking about the immigrant population.
And occupational health codes that protect the environment that they work in. See that they have civil rights laws that protect their own person. See that they have civil liberties laws that protect them further. We the people of this country provide that protection.
Here, it's so bad. If they don't have, you know, you're kind of painting an image. You know, why are these people coming? We're not pulling them here by chains.
It's obvious why people come here. There's one of the most wealthy countries in the world.
Gentlemen, don't all talk at once.
So what are you talking about protecting
Why did you leave Little Rock, Arkansas to go to Philadelphia?
It seems to me that it's obvious why...
Would you extend the courtesy to finish? Look. First thing, let me say the following thing, because there's some basic things that you need to know.
We're going to say the thing I was interrupting. We're going to say 5 more things. I mean, there isn't all afternoon.
That, you know, labor unions and minimum wages for that case cannot improve the condition of the working people of a country.
We do it every day.
Because if
we can improve the condition of working people in countries all around the world.
You know what this man
every day.
You know what you're telling the audience? You're saying that you can solve the problems in Bangladesh. You can make them a rich country if you tell them to unionize like we are and demand higher wages.
No, I didn't say anything remotely like that.
No, it's productivity that keeps income low.
I come back to my initial question. Why are so many leaving the union?
There aren't very many.
Oh, there are
leaving
too.
the union. Oh,
I've given you the statistics.
You think you rhymed off some percentages. I live in the labor movement.
Do you have other percentages?
In or on?
It's true. In, with, and of course they pay me, of course, and I don't have any objection to that at all.
Neither do I.
At least we got you a few minutes ago. We got you to get the labor movement up into this century. And I agree with the observation you made. I agree with the observation you made that the industrial union movement, that there was a union movement, came out of the dirty 30s and out of the Depression and grew, and that was essentially an industrial union movement. But I wonder when I hear your commentary on the film and so on about unions and restricting practices businesses and restricting access to industry and all of this, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I really
Don't mind being disrespectful. It's all right. I'm used to it.
I really wonder if you do understand how the industrial union movement, which is the more recent part of the movement, how it really operates. We're not telling anybody who they have to hire. We're not doing anything about it.
Now, let's raise the question, which certainly is dealt with in the film.
Yeah.
Have minimum wages, which is a form of government intervention, served the interests of the poor